Good morning. Hemshech Chaim Beis we're learning. We had concluded what the Rebbe Rashab had written, but we're now been elaborating on it through Toras Sholom, Sichos of the Rebbe Rashab in the year 1913, Tafresh Shayin Dal Simchas Torah, and we're up to page 201. Right. So let's sum up what we learned yesterday. So we're talking about yichud, two ways that we have the mitzvah to miyachid, meaning to connect, to unite, to exclusify, that God is the only real reality. And we do that one approach from the bottom up. We work our way from recognizing the divine within existence, then recognizing that itself is a divine power to conceal and to create. And we come to as much as we can come to understand that type of yichud. The second yichud is Mamayel Lamata, where Atzmus is everything. Understanding that. Then he spoke about Neif and Avodah. There's two ways of Avodah as well. Started on page 199, two ways. Avodah Mamat Lamayel, where we work our way up from understanding and feeling and sensing the divine within existence. Then we come to realize the divine beyond existence, and all the way to the Sevav Kalam, and then Atzmus, the third level, which is completely beyond. And there we lose, he says, when we reach that level, we lose our faculties. They get suspended, our faculties and our senses, completely suspended. We don't know that hafla, because if we would know it, it would lift us up to highest levels. But Tzaddikim Gedolim, the great Tzaddikim, they could sense it. Question is how? They too lose themselves in it. And he's speaking about, like, he gives them example of the Mittler Rebbe, that is Chushim. So the second level, they can grasp because it's something that still relates to, in some way, to Giluyim. But the highest level, we're talking about, that's completely beyond. So he said that's through Torah and through mitzvahs. Even though there's a difference between them, but here it's not Nogayeh the difference, that both of them are ways that we help us hold on to, handle, so to speak, to even experience the highest level of Atzmus Ein Sof. Now the Eifan Avodah, that's Mamata Lamata. What about Lamayla Lamata? Here we contemplate that Atzmus is Nimsa Lamata. The Atzmus is found everywhere, below just like above. Every step we take, in our hearts, in our kidneys, in our very innards, God is watching every detail. He sees everything, gazetals. And it's Nogayeh to him. Not just he sees, it's important to him how we behave, both in the good things we do and also, God forbid, in something that we don't do proper. How do we explain it's Nogayeh to him? That would seem to mean there's some Hagbola within Atzmus, but we learned earlier that though the wood is Atzmus, it's also, but in Atzmus it's not Hagbola. So he explains that's the EU, the toughest Kulu Alma Velesman, the toughest Bay, which means he can grasp everything, but nothing can grasp him. So even though it's Nogayeh, Makol Mokim Vet Atzmus Nitfes in them. He's not contained by it. He's not defined by it. He's not grasped by it. So he's there, but not the way we're there. When we're into something, we're into it. We're invested in it. It affects us in a deep way. Here it affects him, but he's not affected by it. I know it sounds like a contradiction. It's Nogayeh, but he's not defined by it. He's not contained by it. He's not grasped by it. That's an Atzmi. So Atzmi remains no matter what, because he's an independent reality. He's not dependent on anything else. That's why, like you said, the example when that no matter what, there always remains, the core essence always remains. No matter what happens. So he gives the example when you burn a piece of wood. So even though the wood is no longer there, but the efer, the ash remains. Weil Atzmis von Alts bleibt is as weil vet Nitfes. So, for instance, when it comes to human beings, that we're dependent on something. So if we're dependent on something, obviously it's Nogayeh to us. I need to eat. I need to sleep. I need to drink. I need love. What does that mean? I'm dependent on it. So therefore it's Nogayeh to me. I must have it. And if I don't have it, I'm going to be diminished in some way. But Atzmi can't be diminished because he's an Atzmi. He's a core essence. Mitzusim Atzmus. He's not dependent on anything. So the fact that it's Nogayeh to him is because he chooses that it should be Nogayeh to him. But it's not going to affect his essential entity that if he doesn't have it, he will become diminished. Just using another way of explaining this concept of Atzmi. That's why he's bringing that no matter what, he always remains. Like I'll just give an example by when we say, Chmon al-Islam, God forbid, that if an enemy kills somebody, a Jew, so we say terrible tragedy, but the neshama is nitzki, the neshama goes on, moves on. So yes, it's negate to the neshama to be inside a body, but you can't say the neshama disappeared because of it. Life disappeared. When it comes to an atzmi, even though something is extremely important and vital, but ultimately it remains unscathed by that experience. Just using it as an example. It's not a perfect example because the neshama is affected by the fact that it can't do mitzvahs on this earth. Same thing with Atzmus. Atzmus created existence. Yes, he desires, he wants to do b'tachtenim, and it's absolutely important to him. And he created all of existence for this. But being an Atzmi, he remains intact no matter what. It's not about changing him, that he becomes diminished or he becomes greater, even though it's Nogayeh. Now, in lower levels of Giluim, we learned that a Lakus does get increased or diminished through our mitzvahs or the opposite of mitzvahs. But that's not Atzmus. That's in the lower levels. Atzmus is Nogayeh, but it's Nogayeh in a way that it's not going to affect him because that's not the key here. The key is not to affect him. The key is that to do what he wants and give him the pleasure that he gains, whatever that word pleasure means when we do a mitzvah. So in other words, we have to learn, like, usually in the human relations, I do something for you, it makes you happier, and you gain something from it. I don't do it, you get diminished. So it's a give and take relationship. With Atzmus, the give and take is that we have the honor to be able to fulfill what he wants, and that's Nogayeh to him. It doesn't have to be that we change his being. That's not what is necessary. The necessary thing is to fulfill what he wanted us to fulfill, and that's Nogayeh to him. So basically, our relationship with God is on many levels. There are levels where it's like literally give and take. You actually can increase. We learned that earlier in Ayin Beis, that you could actually make God stronger or weaker, but that's in the Giluyim level. And then there's the level of Etzem, which is we're talking about here. So it's Nogayeh, but it's not Nitfes. I mentioned the page when we talked about that, right? I mentioned page. What page was that? Where I want to see an expression he used there. Yeah, page 1471. Yeah, he says clearly, by Shabbos there's no shinui, by Torah mitzvahs there is. Okay. So I'm going to continue reading now, the bottom of page, column 1 of page 1201. And again, if you have the pages, you can follow. If not, I'll explain it all. Okay. And then he said, I think we read this, if not, I'll read it again anyway. Is does Gitzu Verstand zu dem Friedlichen Inje von Achdus. Now, as we see in Avodah that it's Nogayeh, but he's not defined or contained or grasped by it. So he says this adds, does Gitzu Verstand adds an understanding in what we discussed earlier about Achdus. Remember, we spoke about Achdus, that the Achdus Mamay Lamata, that Atzmus is everything, and even Hagbola, even the limitations, is all the way it sees an Atzmus, not a real limitation. Not Nitfes, and defined by the Hagbola. So same thing here, the Avodah helps us understand that point. Nimtza, what do we derive? What's the takeaway? Hagam Shazam Nogayeh ba'atzmus u'makom mokamein Nitfes b'zeh. Even though it's Nogayeh and Atzmus, he's not defined, contained, or grasped by it. There are levels in Elokus that are defined and are grasped. For example, if you want Chesed Atzilus activated, you have to do Chesed below. But here we're not talking about activating. We're not talking about a Nitfes. Val derech shenis boyer b'inyan hayichud. And now similar to what we explained before about inyan hayichud. But he's going to say something now, which initially I'm not sure what he means. Das geht zu Verstand zum physischen Influence. Now he says, and not the manner, the mokim ha'adon eina min amida. So earlier we learned that the mokim ha'adon eina min amida means there's mokim, there's an actual defined space, but it doesn't occupy space. Which means the mokim itself is not mokim. Now he's saying it's not like that. The loy ba'ef in the mokim. Nor vida is as does guf is Atzmus. So I'm not sure. Before he said it is like this. Now he's saying it's not like mokim or neina min amid. Now he's saying vida is does guf is mokim or neina min amida. So I need to look into this a little more, but I'll say this right now. There's a few ways you can explain this. Either he means that there's a level of mokum ha'adon eina min amida. There you're saying that doesn't have any measurement. Here we're saying it does have measurement, but the measurement, but that measurement itself is Atzmus. So in other words, it's different than what he said earlier. Because earlier he said that is the meaning that the mokum itself is Atzmus. I'm not sure. Or I think what he's trying to say is that now with Avodah we got deeper even. Mokum ha'adon eina min amida. There is a place where there is mokum. From one perspective, there is space. There is a defined space, like he said, 2.5 amos, and so on. Here we're saying, no vida is ados guf is Atzmus. That itself is Atzmus. So in other words, there's no mokum at all. It's not Nogayeh. It's Nogayeh, but it's not Nitfes. Not positive. I'm struggling with these few lines. Why he says it's not like mokum ha'adon eina min amida. There's a letter from the Rebbe that may help here because he speaks about it in 3 ways, but I don't want to go there yet. I hope everybody's following what I'm saying. So I'm not clear what these lines are. I would read on, and maybe it'll become clear. Then I'll come back to this. Umameli dos nid dos. That goof is out. It does nid dos. So it's not defined by the eights, like he said before, by the wood. And here it's not defined by the Hagbola, by that definition of the Avodah. It does durch dem was man tragt das zu Atzmus. The reason for this is the way we get there is because we're looking at everything from the eyes of Atzmus. Atzmus. How do we pronounce this? Shase? Avanasenu lenegdecha.
Shato.
Shata. Translated as what?
It's in Tehillim, Shabbos morning davening.
What's the translation of Shata?
You put it, you edit, you put it in front of you.
In other words, Shata avanasenu lenegdecha. We account for, so to speak, our sins before you.
You come. Shato.
Yeah, Shata. That's what it says. Trak the sutza atzmus. Shata, you. Yeah. You as in the Eberster.
Yeah.
Yeah. As edizich meide omnom chatosi. Yeah, we're saying to the Eberster, place our sins before you. As edizich meide omnom chatosi. He acknowledges that I have sinned, that I've, however, sinned. Nor mednit, but not more than that. Un imidas Nogayeh. And it's Nogayeh to the Eibishter. That's why we're saying, we present before you, Shate, you shall present, our sins you should place them before you, and we acknowledge what we did wrong, because it's Nogayeh. Why are we acknowledging our sins? Because it's Nogayeh to the Eibishter, but not more than that. Im al zeir does was is ibergefallen. It very disturbs God very much that we transgressed, that we fell, that we slipped, that we what's the word, blundered, that we stumbled. Is durch dem vertus Atzmus. And when we demonstrate that, it's Nogayeh to him, that itself becomes Atzmus, that because we're saying God lenegdecha. The hainu, that means mashas deinis nasa lekazachis. That the zdeinis, the deliberate crime, sins, nasale become like merits. So in other words, it's a form of tshuva. So it's Nogayeh to him, that's why it's Nogayeh, but it's not more than that. It's not like he's Nitfes, he's not defined by it. That's why you can do tshuva, and the zdeinis can become zachis. I need to review this piece a few more times to really feel that I understand it, because I'm not positive. But it sounds to me, because he wants to say it's Nogayeh, and that alone becomes Atzmus. Once you do that, well, that's Nogayeh, it becomes Atzmus. But his Atzmus is not Nitfes. Does he mean he's not Nitfes? That's why, because if the Eibishter was Nitfes in something we did wrong, how can you correct it? But because it's Nogayeh, but he's not Nitfes, in other words, it's like, you come to your father is not diminished by the fact that you did something wrong to him. But it's Nogayeh to him that you did something wrong. It does bother him, but you're not diminishing him. So when you present it to him, he forgives you. And the zdeinis becomes achis, because it becomes like you've presented him, not more than that. That's what it sounds like he's saying. Obviously, you still need to do the tshuva. But we're talking about from the level of Atzmus, not because he's diminished. It's not like you hurt him, and now you're like correcting what you hurt. When a human being that you, let's say, hurt, you have to correct. You have to apologize. You have to make sure, do reparations. Here, reparations are not needed because it's Nogayeh to him, but he's not diminished by it. He's not defined by it. I think that's what he's saying here. Sounds right. But I'm still not sure what he means, but so now this itself has become Atzmus. Okay. Was man weiß, as alt is Nogayeh in Atzmus. Let's continue reading, and then, as I said, I'll try to explain more. Now, through the fact that we know that everything is Nogayeh, everything is Nogayeh, it's important to Atzmus. Men weiß mit wem man handelt. We know with who we're dealing. This is all the Yichud Mamayel Lamata, the Avodah Mamayel Lamata. That's all beginning from Atzmus. Atzmus is everything. He sees everything, and every detail is important to him. He's not defined by it, but it's important to him. So how does it affect us? It affects us because you know who you're dealing with now. You're dealing with Atzmus himself. He's menizer in al skam bedover hakal. Since he sees it all, and he's all part, and he's one with it, and it's Nogayeh to him, regardless of the fact that it doesn't impact him in the sense of like being contained or defined by it. But you know that, so you know who you're dealing with. So he's menizer. You're going to be careful with everything you do, even with a small matter, even with a very lenient matter. From our perspective, it may be a small matter, dover kal. But how could it be a dover kal if it's Nogayeh and Atzmus? Atzmus is not a small level. If it's Nogayeh to Atzmus, even a little detail of what you do, then it's a big thing. Just to share a story about that I heard. Rebbe Rashab was once traveling to Vienna. I think it was Nikolsburg. It was a city there, if I recall correctly. And he was there, stayed there for Shabbos. He was there with his Rebbetzin, the Rebbetzin Toras Sholom. And he was with a few Chassidim. So I think it was the Nikolsburger Rav who was hosting him. I may be wrong with the name. And the Rebbe Rashab, like all the Rabbeim, they did not, when they had any problems with their teeth, they would not have their teeth treated. Not cavities, not false teeth or anything like that. For many different reasons. One of the reasons, of course, with cavities was the issue of chometz on Pesach. Because the cavity is like a keli, a klei rishon, a klei sheni, a klei shlishi. So the Rebbe Rashab sometimes suffered from very big toothache. So the Rebbetzin Toras Sholom was very always concerned because it was terrible pain. The Gemara says a toothache is one of the worse than any other pain. So she said to the host, the Rav, I think in Nikolsburg Rav, she said to him, since you're not a Chabad Chassid, you can talk to the Rebbe in a way that Chassidim can't. So please talk to him about getting something done about his teeth. Okay. At first he didn't want, but then he finally agreed. So he went to the Rebbe Rashab and they started to speak. So they told the Rebbe Rashab, I hear that you don't the teeth because of a chshasha. That's the way he said it in Hungarian accent. Achshusha, which means a chshash of a chshash of a chshash. A concern of a concern. It's like 3 steps away from a real concern. That by eating something through the year that's chometz, that on Pesach you can't kash your teeth, so therefore may still have something from that. So he says just achshusha, and a toothache is so much more painful, as the Gemara says. So Rebbe Rashab looked at him and said to him, achshusha is more painful for me than my toothache. No, it's a dover kal, like he's saying here. From a halachic point of view, you could say it's not like, there are things we do that are not allowed. There are things we do like a siyog, that's just a chumrah to make sure to protect us. And then there's things that achshasha, by the Rebbe Rashab is saying, by him achshasha is more painful than a toothache. So in other words,
I think it happened with Rabbi Akiva's Sefer, the Das Sefer.
Maybe.
Some Sefer.
Could be. Who, by the way, married, I think his daughter married the Rab Mendel, the brother of the Rebbe Rashab.
I don't know.
Yeah. His second zivug was the daughter of the Ksav Sefer. Just for the record.
Rabbi,
One second.
was told
But this is not Iksav Sefer. I think it's his son or grandson.
Ksav Sefer was the son of the Chasam Sefer, no?
Yeah. But this is their Das Sefer.
This story was told by Rab Tzvi Greenwald, Toras Sholom, Naftali's father, at a Kiddush I heard on Shabbos upstairs. You remember?
His name was Rabbi Akiva.
Of course I remember.
I think.
As soon as he started the story, I remember.
Okay.
It was about, my son is by now 38.
So 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, I see, I remember.
As a matter of fact, there's
Did I say it accurately?
yes. It was with, from the Mishpach of the Chasam Sefer.
Okay, that's what Rab Shlomo just said.
Yeah.
Okay, my point is, going back here, that why? Because Nogayeh and Atzmus. I'm not saying that I'm giving a beer to the story, because from our point of view, it's a dover kal. It's like a small little thing. It's not a big. But he says, how could it not? Medveis medvem handled is menized in als gama dover kal. Varam via das a dover kal will bados Nogayeh and Atzmus. So he's speaking now, Mamai Lamata, the Avodah, that when you know everything is Atzmus, every little thing matters. That way you can understand what he said earlier. So what we have to do is just bring before that to him. Imidas Nogayeh. Im art zeir das was is ariber gefal. Very interesting, very, very powerful words. But he's not Nitfes bezeh. In other words, Mamata Lamaila, he was talking more that we come to understand the godliness within us, the hafla. And with that, we grasp it all through Torah and mitzvahs. Here is the exact opposite. Since Atzmus is everything is Atzmus, so every detail matters. Because there you're trying to grasp, you're trying to appreciate Elokus and Mamata Lamaila. Here's the other way around. Atzmus is coming down within you, and you're drawing that down. So therefore, everything is Nogayeh. It's a very different approach. There, it's all about our effort of climbing up. Here, we're bringing down Atzmus into our lives. See the difference? That's the key difference that he's saying here. Maybe that's why he said there that you can't really reach that level, like he said, Abregale. You can't fully understand. You can't fully reach it because you have to lose your keiches achushim. Here, you're bringing Atzmus into every detail. It's not about you appreciating it or not. It's about bringing it into your life. I think that's what he means. That may be why he said that you need that only way. The Torah mitzvah allows him to bring it in. Yeah. So, any questions before I continue? V'zeu inyan masha omar kvei dushas admuram tzoi navgam nignas beginze mereimim. So we'll now understand with this what the Mittler Rebbe said. He brings the Mittler Rebbe again. The tam, the reason masha berosh Hashanah v'yem kippur of Yom Kippurim. Why does everybody, also great Tzaddikim, say Oshamnu Bagadnu? Tzaddikim Delim don't have any sins. So why are they saying Vidui? Oshamnu Bagadnu, we're guilty, we're says so Mittler Rebbe said, V'hainu, Mipnei Shadinu Mishpat Rosh Hashanah is from Atzmus. Because the judgment of Rosh Hashanah is coming from Atzmus. From your pun, from your lefanecha, from your plimius.
Mishpati Yetzei. Mishpati Yetzei.
Lefanech mishpata yetzei. that mishpat v'din comes malfonecha. So since it's coming from Atzmus, mele farun zidos ateva, and therefore for us it's a teva because it's coming from such a great place. We're talking about from Atzmus. It's like seeing the highest levels. Dinu mishpat from Bezdin Shalmaila. We're not talking about the judgment and the ruling from the supernal court of law, Bezdin Shalmaila. The Kashem sheyesh Bezdin Shalamata, ken yesh Bezdin Shalamayla. So Bezdin is when you come below to a court of law of Rabbanim, of Dayonim. So there's also a Bezdin connected that. There's a Bezdin Shalamayla. We're not talking about that. Rosh Hashanah is from Atzmus. Onam zeu shaykh l'ishtalshus. Zui shaykh zeu shaykh l'ishtalshus. That Bezdin shaykh l'ishtalshus there, it's a whole shakavitaria, back and forth, a prosecutor, a defense, and so on. Avladim mishpat Rosh Hashanah, but the judgment of Rosh Hashanah does not come from Bezdin Shalom. Huma Atzmus Ein Sof Mamish. That's from answer of Ein Sof Mamish. Shalagab Atzmus Ein Sof Hakol Nichshavim Kecheitim Apeshim. And when you're talking about Atzmus, everybody, even Tzaddikim Delim, are called Cheitim Apeshim, because nobody is the perfection of Atzmus. When you're talking Giluyim, you say there's Talshus, there's Tzaddikim, there's Beinanim, there's Rishayim, and so on. So here you're talking about Atzmus, and that's why he's explaining. That's why the Mittler Rebbe says, everyone says Oshamnu Begadnu, even Tzaddikim Delim, because it's coming from Atzmus. What's the meaning? Because Atzmus is beyond everything, and therefore everybody has to stand, like you said before. Yeah, that's what he meant. So everybody presenting because of the lack. Because we say chet meloshach sodom chassidus brings. There's a chet that's an actual sin, but for tzaddikim, sodom means they haven't done as much as they could do. So compared to what they could do, it's called a chet. Not saying that explicitly here, but I'm just explaining. So when you talk about Atzmus, Moshe Rabbeinu, for example, reached the 49 gates of Bina, but not Sharanu until the end of his life. But by a tzaddik, there's ein tzaddik baruch sheyasa teva lo yechta meloshach chasad. It's not perfect, so that's why. So if the din was coming from Bezdin, so Bezdin has what can Bezdin do with that tzaddik? He didn't do anything wrong. But when you're talking about Atzmus, like he said, even an Indian cow, which seems like it's like a completely almost like a negligible thing, but Nogayeh and Atzmus. And that's why you say Oshamnu, because everything is Nogayeh there. Nimtza, as Alts is Nogayeh and Atzmus. So we see everything is Nogayeh and Atzmus. When Atzmus vet Nitfes in them, and Atzmus does not get contained by it, now I understand what he said. Two ways. Either Atzmus is not contained by it, that's Mokem Ha'oren Eina Min Amida, because he's not contained, he's not defined by it, but he said even a higher level now, or that Agbola itself is Atzmus. So that's it. It's not contained by it. That's the way. That's one way to explain it. Earlier explained that itself is Atzmus. The Mokim itself is Ein Mokim. Or you could say that he's not defined by the Mokim, which is, I guess, a little lower level. That's what he meant before. Now I understand. They say, so now it's Nogayeh to him the Avodah, but he's not Nitfes. Helps us understand in the Yichud that there's even higher level than Mokim Adon Eina Min Amida. In other words, it's not that the Mokim is not Nitfes by him, but that itself is Atzmus. Those Gufi is Atzmus. Now the Snid does. 1 second. The Snid does. Those Gufi, the Snid does because it's Atzmus. And those, 1 second. That's the it's Atzmus and that's Nogayeh. Okay. And with that, we finish this sif. We have just a few more lines to read, but I'll stop if anybody wants to ask anything. So that's the two. He's now explained two levels in the Yichud Mamayla Lamata itself. This Oy helps tremendously, in my opinion. And I said I'll explain it more, but if anybody wants to ask anything, let me go through that, and then we'll go. Yeah. Any questions?
Yeah, I'm still struggling with when the Rebbe is using the word Nogayeh to Atzmus.
Did you look up the places I told you the other day?
On 1247?
Well,
Yeah, and the
Vayikra.
Maimarim of Vayikra Tzav Ayin Hey in volume 2.
No, I did not.
So I suggest look at it
And then,
and then tell me what
Okay.
question. But I have no
Okay.
problem. You could ask again, but
no. I'll look. You're right. You gave me homework. I'll do it. Later.
So look it up, and then we can talk about it, because there's more stuff there that will help understand some of what it says here. But one thing clear: Nogayeh means it's critically important to him. That doesn't mean it diminishes or strengthens him. It's not the way it would be by us. By us, something's Nogayeh, it means we're defined by it, and we're weakened or strengthened. In Atzmus, there's no that. He's Nogayeh because he wants it to be Nogayeh, and it's important to him. And that's that. Doesn't have to have a reason why it's important. That's what he wants. Just keep that in mind.
But if it's important to him, or as you said earlier in today's shir, it gives him pleasure, whether we do it or not. There's something to be a
I told you, it's not like it is by humans. No, because no matter what happens, he's complete. It doesn't affect him in any way. It doesn't have to affect him to be Nogayeh to him. You're using human logic on Atzmus, and you can't do that. That's what he's trying to say. You can't make God human. He's not human. He's complete. Like he said, if everything doesn't happen, Atzmus doesn't become less Atzmus when a person sins. And it doesn't become more Atzmus when a person does a mitzvah, though it's Nogayeh to him. You can have, as I said yesterday, you have to go beyond the way our you're thinking in terms of human and scientific logic, cause and effect. Cause and effect doesn't work that way up there. But as I said, look up those places, see if you get any clarity there, and then come back with all your questions. I'm happy to address it. There's entire sikha. There's also a sikha in Chelik Vav L'Kutei Sichos, where he talks about Nesava Kadosh Baruch Hu. He makes it very clear there. Did you ever read the sikha Shmois in volume 6 in L'Kutei Sichos? Says that Nesava Kadosh Baruch Hu, the desire to have a Dira B'Tachtenim, is not based on logic and not based on fulfillment. You're not fulfilling anything. God does not become more or less due to making a Dira B'Tachtenim. It's what he desired. That's it. In other levels of Avodah, you do something, you're completing what he wants you to do. When Nesava has nothing to do with us. It's to do, that's what he wants. When you do it, you fulfilled the Nesava. He talks very much there, this type of language as well, that it's not about something that you are accomplishing.
Or changing in God. Atzmus.
Yeah. And it makes total sense, because remember, Atzmus doesn't have to do anything. He chose in his own desire and his own benevolence, if you wish, to create existence, to do us a favor and create us and allow us to experience him. He didn't do it because he's lonely. He didn't do it because he's incomplete. That's his nesava. That's why I don't accept the words that some say that God needs us. He doesn't need us. God chose and gave us a gift. He said, I will give you a piece of myself. Why? There's no reason. There's no questions on a taiva. And actually, that allows us to experience Atzmus in its pure sense. Because if Atzmus gave us a reason, and you're adding something to him, you're not talking about Atzmus then. Then you're talking about how he's engaging with us. It's like I mentioned about going down on your hands and knees, going down on the floor to play with your children. And your children are very happy, and they think, oh, wow, my father, my mother is playing with me. They don't know that you're doing it only for them. It's not because you need to do it, because you are getting fulfilled by playing with some toy. You're doing it for them. And you're doing them, and you're bringing yourself, you're completely investing yourself in it, and it's Nogayeh to you. But it doesn't change you, not one way or the other, because it's not something you must do, and you don't have to do it. You're doing it simply as a desire to love your child. I understand in a human being, there's a certain pleasure you get playing with your child, so there's something that's added. But imagine there's not that either. It's only because God wanted to give us something, and he gave us a piece of himself. Now, he could have said, you're never going to get a piece of Atzmus. I'll allow you to interact with parts of me where you can add things and subtract things. That's Atzilus, or higher than Atzilus. That's in Seder Shtalshus. But he wants to give us a piece of Atzmus himself. And Atzmus can be affected by us. So the only way to do it is by saying, here, I'm creating a world. I want you to do mitzvahs. I want you to stay away. It's Nogayeh to me. You're never going to understand why it's Nogayeh, because there's no why. And that's what you need to know, and just do it. Then that way you have experience. You're experiencing me, and I experience you. That's the highest level of connection. All other levels lower in Ishtalshus, which are very high levels. This is a chiddush of Chassidus Chabad. Most of Yiddishkeit, you're not going to hear such conversation. They'll talk about the places where you do add something. But if you want to talk Atzmus Mamish, the Atzmus that is completely self-contained, it's Yusim Atzmus, built the Mitzias Nimtza. Nothing in common with us. This is the only way to enter there. The only way. Everything else would have to be lower levels of Elikus. You want to enter there, it's going to be it's a different zone. It's a zone where you're not going to get answers based on human questions. There it's completely, you're doing it because God wants you to do it, and that's that. And it's Nogayeh, you know it's Nogayeh because he told us it's Nogayeh to him. Not because he needs it to be Nogayeh, not because anything is added. And there's nothing wrong with that. On the contrary, it's the deepest level of bittul, because you're doing it because it's Nogayeh, even if you don't add a thing. If you add something, you already have that, your own internal motivation. I'm giving you something that you wouldn't have on your own. But again, it does not negate the binyan hamalchus and the things that we build. I mean, there's plenty that we accomplish that is actually affecting Seder Shtalshus. Now, Mashiach comes and so on. Also, Atzmus wants that too. He wants to have a dira b'tachtenim. He desires a dira b'tachtenim, that he, Atzmus, should feel comfortable in this world. So there are many levels that are impacted, and there are levels where it's Nogayeh, but not Nitfes. He doesn't even use the word Ani Hashem Leishanisi here, because he made it clear earlier that he uses that term only on Hisavos, on creation, not Avodah. But it's pretty clear that not Nitfes is probably also not Shinui, even though it doesn't say it explicitly, but that would be my understanding. Okay.
The famous story about that was it that Tzemach Tzedek says, "Who are you?" And Ata, you, was Atzmus. That it's not mine, not Zaidi, not this and that. That level of Atzmus. Are you saying here that he doesn't need us, obviously, because he chose it. It's only for our sake. But once he chose us, in what we just quoted here about Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, he brings our head before him, our lackeys.
Once he chose, it's Nogayeh to him. Yeah.
So Nogayeh. So it does bring. Ultimately, does our Avodah down here, Avodah, not Hisavos, our Avodah, bring pleasure or displeasure to Atzmus Elaine?
I don't know. You have to me, the word pleasure, I right away think in terms of I bring pleasure to you because I did something for you. If that's what you mean, no, that's not that level. So you have to define, what does it mean to bring pleasure to someone? Pleasure in our context is usually, without it, they wouldn't have the pleasure. And with it, you're giving them pleasure. I don't know if you could apply that to that level of Atzmus. If you're speaking just to, we call the Lashon B'nai Adam, just for language purposes, yeah. Nachas Ruach and so on, we know that. It says that, Nachas Ruach, Shamarta v'Nasir Tzeni. Is that Nachas Ruach on the level of Atzmus the same as the Nachas Ruach on the level of Atzilus? Definitely not. So you have to define what that Nachas Ruach, you have to explain. What do you mean by pleasure and Nachas Ruach? If you can explain it in an Atzmizdik way, then fine. I could explain it that way, but it's Nogayeh. That, by me, Nogayeh is the same as pleasure on that level. But it's not the pleasure that we usually think in terms of, I brought you a gift. Before that, you didn't have it. Now your an Atzmi is not affected that way. So Nogayeh does not mean fulfillment or fulfilling a need or more or less, the way he's explaining it. That's why I say you have to go back to those Maimorim, learn it, and see what you come away with, and then we'll see what remains.
Okay.
It's always going to take work to wrap our head, but we're talking about Atzmus here, and I'm clearly he wants to make sure that Atzmus is not Nitfes. You have to understand that word, not Nitfes. That he keeps saying also. He says Nogayeh, but not Nitfes.
I have a question, and I apologize I was late to the class, but I think the question is relevant. If it's not, I'll let it go. I wonder if the issue of making something pleasant for the Eberster is connected with the idea in his Kadosh Baruch to have a dwelling place in this world. Meaning to say, when we do a mitzvah, we act in a godly way, so we are essentially fulfilling at least a tiny part, say very, very small, but some part of that cheshek, of that desire to dwell in this world. So we're essentially fulfilling his desire. He wants it. It's something that he wants, and we're giving that to him. And so that's pleasing to him because we're fulfilling his desire. That to me is a logical statement, and it's consistent with his desire. It's consistent with everything else we learn in Chassidus.
It could interpret it in different ways. I wouldn't interpret it that way. Do you hear when I referred to Likutei Sichos Volume 6?
What?
I had just yes,
I
yes,
want
I
to
did
move my
hear
car,
that.
so I don't want to be stuck in the middle. Okay, 11.
Naftali, your microphone's on. Naftali, your microphone's on. What were you saying, Rabbi Jacobson?
I referred to Likutei Sichos Volume 6, the second Sikha on Shmois. I strongly recommend that everyone read that Sikha. Because there he talks directly about this, and there he actually says, no, it's not the fulfill. He doesn't use the word pleasing and all that. You're fulfilling the nesava, but that's that. That's it. He does not talk about that it's fulfilling anything. So, because you're dealing with Atzmus here, Atzmus can want things, and that wanting does not subject to the laws that we understand. That when you do something that someone wants, you fulfill something. That language is reserved only for creation. You can't apply that to Atzmus. He says that there. So the only thing you're doing is, yes, you're fulfilling a nesava, but that's that. You can't say, in other words, that he was missing something that you a lack thereof. You lacked something and then he filled it and so on. So you want to use the word pleasure? Fine, but you have to qualify what you mean by pleasure. It's not the same as when two people who care about each other give each other pleasure and they fulfill, they enrich each other's lives. So when you talk about Atzmus, all that language has to be modified or even changed. If you're talking Giluyim, and remember, Giluyim is a very high level. Most of Yiddishkeit, most Jews before Chassidus Chabad, or at least before these ideas of Chassidus Chabad were developed, would not go there. We didn't talk about Atzmus. We got spoiled here. That's this whole language that we, mitzvahs add something, don't add something, and we do have that language. It says, a person does a sin, matishin keichei shel maila. He weakens the divine power above, but that's not Atzmus. That's in the Giluyim. That's the levels that God shows should be impacted. But Atzmus, like he said, when you burn something down, he said, you burn a piece of wood, but always something will remain from it, the ash. So even when the Beis Hamikdash was burned, due to our sins, that's all in Hishtalshus, in Giluyim. Atzmus is not impacted, not this way, not that way by it, but still Nogayeh to him. So you have to understand, what does it mean it's Nogayeh to a level that's completely beyond it all? That's a good question to ask. But to try to force Atzmus into our lexicon is not the way to go. The opposite. We have to figure out, how does Atzmus, how could it be Nogayeh to such a level that is completely beyond anything? Built to Mitzias Nimtza. Completely not even our reality. Why would it be? That's why there are Kabbalists and thinkers, Jewish thinkers, legitimate ones, that will say Atzmus is beyond us. We don't deal with Atzmus. We deal with what Atzmus put into place, that where we interact. And that's also life and death and critical. But it's not Atzmus. Chassidus Chabad spoiled us in a way. I introduced Atzmus into the picture. That Atzmus is also Nogayeh and Atzmus. But now the question is, how can we explain Nogayeh when you're dealing with such a level that's not Nitfes? So that's the direction that you want to think about. Not the other way around, how to take Atzmus and say, you know what, since it's Nogayeh, that means it affects him and it's more and less like it is. Because then it's not Atzmus. Then you're talking about the levels of Giluyim. That's actually what Yichud Mamayla Lamata means. Not the way we understand Lamata Lamayla. Mata Lamayla, that's why he said Lamata Lamayla, you can't fully grasp it. Why can't you grasp it? Because you're talking about us climbing up, and we have our limitations, and we need strength and so on. And that's why he said we have to lose ourselves. Here it's another approach. We're saying Atzmus is everything. Forget about me. I don't exist. What does Atzmus want? You want me to do a mitzvah? I do a mitzvah. I know it's Nogayeh to you. I don't care if it's a small thing, a lenient thing. That's all that matters. I'm not using my mind here to try to understand how it works. I'm just allowing Atzmus to take control of my life. That's Mamayla Lamata. Mamata Lamayla, I am reaching through my efforts and initiative to reach to Atzmus, or to first the lower levels of Elikus. That's why you don't see language here, Mamala Kalam, Seva Kalam, Atzmus, because here he says Atzmus is everything. And he wants a mitzvah. That's where mitzvahs come from. There you are. I'm here to serve. I'm a soldier in the army. I don't need to understand my commander-in-chief. I don't need to know whether I'm adding something or not adding something. As soon as you say that language, you're already talking Mamata Lamayla. So I'm just bringing it into the whole conversation as well. As soon as you say, what's my contribution? That's fine, but that's on your terms. You're not talking about Atzmus terms. Maybe another way of phrasing the whole idea here.
Very helpful. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but it doesn't this come to, I mean, our whole, as you've always stressed all the years, this whole learning is to the interface between us and God.
That's Mamata Lamayla. That's why there's a Mamata Lamayla, exactly.
And the Milamayla Lamata is not a way of interfacing with God?
Yeah, but it's a very different way. That's why you can't get to Mamayla Lamata if you don't get through Mamata Lamayla. If you did Mamata Lamayla properly, you wouldn't have a problem with any of this, by the way. Because if you really did the work on your side of the interface, then you wouldn't be trying to figure out how Atzmus works. You'd realize that I am now completely lose myself in Atzmus, and now let Atzmus take over. As soon as you have these two things, me and Atzmus, means you're still in a Mamata Lamayla place. However, we still have to do our effort as much as possible, the Yichud of Mamayla Lamata. That's why he's telling this to us. But the truth, if you really want to experience it properly, I would say you probably need Mamata Lamayla, a lot of it, before you really get to Mamayla Lamata. But there are both. And there are moments in time, like by Matan Torah or something, where the Eibishter will reveal himself and give us a little like a flash. But that still has to be integrated. In other words, like I've always said, the person who studied all his life Torah and learned Chassidus, and at 90 years old says, I don't know God, is not like a 2-year-old or 5-year-old or 50-year-old that says, I don't know God because I didn't learn it all. The I don't know that comes from a Mamata Lamayla about Atzmus is far, far deeper than what you know in the lower levels. Because then I don't know is not a statement of weakness. Oh, I'm lacking knowledge. It's on the contrary. It's a statement that I've come to an experience where knowledge is limited tool, and knowledge will never experience Atzmus in the fullest sense. Less machshava tfisa beklal. But you can't begin with that. You tell somebody you can't understand Atzmus. First, you have to understand what you could understand. First, you have to know what you could know. Then you find out that you know things, that you find out that there are things I know I don't know. Then you find out there are things I don't know that I don't know. And that becomes part of your deeper experience, ultimately, in connecting. So it is an interface. It goes both directions. But just sitting here and reading Toras Sholom about these two doesn't suddenly mean that you and I have reached that level of total refinement on both levels. And each person has to figure out where your interface is right now. And many of your questions help you understand that. The fact that you're asking these questions, which is good, helps you define now, where do I stand? Here's what I do know. Here's what I don't know. And that's part of the Avodah. That's how we're interfaced. The very discussion that we're having about Mamat L'mayla Amal Mayla is also part of the interface. Even our questions are part of the interface. There's nothing wrong with having questions. But certain things, what can I tell you? Certain things, your questions today, for me, are not a question. Because I already struggled with it. One day, these questions you're asking now won't be a question because you'll get it. Not because the question was answered, you'll get it. But it's a constant journey. There's always going to be more questions. So it's all part of this whole process of trying to appreciate Atzmus. And it's not, and if it doesn't come easily, you're doing well. If you're going to get a quick answer, fix a cute thing, and someone say, "Oh, now I got it," I would question whether you really integrate it. That's why I said, do the homework, learn the Maimorim, see what it says, try to understand it as best as you can, and then we'll take it further.
But ultimately here, it is the Rebbe revealing to us right now that ultimately in the Yichudi Elah, that basically we're not going to be able to relate to that with seichel, which with our knowledge seichel. It's
with the seichel that you have right now, Eliezer. Seichel has many levels. There's
any seichel, even a seichel of tzaddik gamor. Tzaddik gamor seichel can reach this level of understand of Nogayeh lo tfus lo nitfes.
Yeah, I'm not a tzaddik gamor, and I get that level. So for sure, tzaddik gamor gets it. Yeah, and I'm sure there's levels of getting it.
But in that level that you get it at, is that you understand that it's Lamailo, you're higher than your rationality. You'll never fully understand it with Chabad. You're Chabad.
No, you come to understand that understanding itself is not what you think understanding is. Who defines what seichel is? Is seichel itself seichel? Is seichel itself logical? Who said that seichel is the ultimate litmus test for reality?
I mean, there's
a lot of things to say about seichel. I mean, remember, you're talking from your perspective right now, which is completely what you should be doing. But there are different perspectives on this. So yes, we all were zeicha, we merit to hear what the Rebbe Rashab says to us. Now everybody has to figure out how to internalize it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would suggest that your seichel is not the seichel of a tzaddik gomer. Do you agree?
Absolutely, sure.
So how could we talk about something that we're not even there? You could, I would suggest figure it out how you can understand it best on your level. We're given these are the words. This is what the Rebbe Rashab said. Now let's try to figure out the best as possible how we can understand what he's saying. And look, at the end of the day, the mere fact that a person says, Atzmus is everything. And that Atzmus wants me to do a mitzvah, even a dover kal, even a little thing. And right now I go do it. You're experiencing Atzmus more than all your seichel will ever experience. That you can understand?
Yeah, I understand. Like mitzvah, that same mitzvah, doing a mitzvah is higher than learning Torah.
No, my point is, because Atzmus is not just about understanding, it's experiencing Atzmus. You can experience something like, you can listen to a beautiful piece of music. You don't have to understand it, but it touches you. Look, this is exactly what need to be doing. He's giving us a picture of what Yichud Mamayla Lamata is, and now it's our turn is to figure out what he means. I'm trying to explain the best as I can, and above all, it's as I said, it's the other way around. Atzmus, nothing had to be Nogayeh to Atzmus, because nothing fills him and nothing diminishes him. He chose that it should be Nogayeh. So that's what you want to understand. Why would Atzmus choose to be Nogayeh? So the answer is there's no why, because Nesava is beyond Seichel. First it was Nogayeh to him, then he created Seichel. So the Nogayeh part is something that you need to relate to in an Atzmisdik way. Even when we talk about the love of our children, we say Ava Atzmis. We're wired that way. So there you'll explain, why do I love my child so much? Because it's biological. It's an extension of me. It's like I love myself. But even that needs explanation. Why do you love yourself? Why do you love something so much? That there's unconditional love, that there's nothing could ever diminish that love. I'm talking about a healthy, true, essential love. There's no real explanation. That's the way it is. That's what we'll say. Yeah, you can explain he's a part of me, he's a biological part of me. But again, why do you love yourself so much and you can't love anyone else like you love yourself? So most people don't ask that question because it's just a given. You know, I love myself because, I don't know, ego. I'm the evolutionary biologists will say because survival of the fittest.
Right.
Your interest is that you should always survive. So you have to love yourself more than anyone else. If you didn't, you wouldn't protect your interests. But is that an ultimate explanation, or is that a scientific explanation? So there's a lot of things that are just the way it is. Let's talk about ourselves. I mentioned many times, our existence, our feeling that we exist is not rational. It's not based on seichel. When I ask you right now, what is your left leg doing? Until I mentioned that, you didn't even think about it. When you start, your seichel starts to work, then you're aware and conscious. But consciousness is not the condition for reality. Something can exist and you're not aware and conscious of it. Since when is consciousness and awareness the barometer or litmus test for reality? It's part of reality, the experience of reality. You could say for me to be aware means I'm experiencing it. You know, what's his name? Descartes said, "I think, therefore I am." Okay, that's one way to look at it. But there's a lot more. There's a lot. You are before you think. I would say from a Chassidus point of view, I am, therefore I think. Not I think, therefore I am. So my am is far more fundamental and etzem than thinking. Thinking is an awareness of your being, which by all means, Hashem wants it to be aware and giluyim, and he wants us to be conscious, and the interface we're talking about. But the very essence of existence, of your own being, is one that you just say, I exist. Someone will say to you, prove to me you exist. You need to prove that you exist? And is there any proof that will be satisfactory? No, because you could say everything is an illusion. It's all and part of the proof is also an illusion. My point is, Atzmisdik experience defies a logical thing, and so on. Yes, there are things in our etzem that we want, we need. It says in the Gemara, Ein Adam b'loy bayis, or b'loy karka. A person is not complete without a home. Ein Adam b'loy isha. A person is not complete without a spouse. Explain that. Why? What is the spouse adding something to us or not? So on a Giluyim level, for sure. You have a companion, you have intimacy, you could have children, you have all the benefits that a relationship brings to you. But at some level, explain why is it at some level? Because that's the way God made it. That two halves of one whole, however you want to explain it. But there are things that it's not going to just be because it's fulfilling something. It's going to be because that's how it is. That's how an etzem works. Anyway, I can go on and on. There's a lot to say because obviously when you learn this, you think about it. And the more you think about it, the more it'll become clear. There are things at some point people have asked me, will I ultimately understand it or it won't bother me and I won't need to understand it? And my answer is always, you'll understand that you don't need to understand it the way you understand it now. You'll have a different level of understanding. That's where the interface comes in. As a matter of fact, these two expressions that he said, which I find very fascinating, I want to talk about it more in the next class, as Atzmus vet Nitfes in them, I think that has tremendous implications in understanding this, and also Ayin Beis, that is not defined by it, or contained by it, or grasped by it, or that itself is Atzmus, is also part of this journey. As you can see, I probably can talk about this for a good 12 hours, honestly, maybe even more, because there's so much to say. I'm giving a little what I think to help understand this, but work on it. Exercise your brain, exercise your being, and you'll find interesting things.
When you reversed that point where you said, I think, therefore I am, and I am, therefore I think, I didn't realize there is a philosophical group called existentialists that reversed Descartes' I think, therefore I am. He's apparently the founder of the they call it essentialists, and they're existential. I didn't know that. That's very interesting. Wow, that's a very important thing. Atzmus precedes thinking, obviously. Very good. Thank you.
There's a lot to say, a lot to say. I would definitely advise learning the Sikha I mentioned, Chelik Vav Beis, Shmois Beis. I could tell you what page even, but you can find it pretty easily. It's and the Maimorim, like I said, Vayikra and Sav Ayin Hey, and going back to what we said here, page 1471. And we'll talk about it more. Not going anywhere. Either way, it's good. It's exhilarating. No.
Extremely.
Think of it as a journey. Think of it as a journey. It's like you're asking me, we're, let's say, 1,000 feet up on Mount Everest, and you're asking me, what will the horizon look like at 2,000 feet? What would be the answer? When we get there, you'll see. I can't really explain a horizon that we haven't seen yet. So think of it like a journey, and you're on your road. You're on the journey. Even if you're frustrated and you feel you don't have a full answer, trust me, it's part of the journey. It's necessary. That's how you break through. It's like they say, when you're running and if it doesn't hurt and you're exercising, it means you're not exercising well enough. It has to hurt. Meaning you have to push yourself. Eliezer, you and Atzmus are going to see each other face to face. But it's going to be very different. You may not be the person you recognize right now.
I hope. Thank you. I'll take it as a bracha. But I'm not upset, but when you completed Ayin Beis with Shema Yisrael and Yehuda, it seemed like okay, it had like a natural, there was some satisfaction there or something, some completion. As I think Tzvi said, that's unbelievable how he ends it. Now we've got now I have more angst than I did before. Now
we're going to go back to the end of Ayin Beis, and you'll see a whole new appreciation of that ending. So. I think the problem is, Eliezer, I think you enjoy life too much. And it's hard for you to imagine a life where your pleasure will not be fulfilled.
Well, I hope when I see Atzmus face to face, it's with pleasure. And I hope I do it.
For sure. That's not a question. But like he said here, and I want to go over it as well, he says, you bring even your iniquities to Atzmus.
Oh my gosh.
And that's Nogayeh to him, not because what do you think? What do you think is more awesome? If you find out that God has been hurt by your Averis, or you find out he hasn't been hurt, but he really cares, which is you think deeper. So most people would say, if he's hurt, it bothers me more because I hurt God. I hurt someone I love. But the truth is, the other one is much deeper if you really think about it. Because it's not about being hurt. It's because I want it. It's like, I want your mitzvahs. I want you to be, like he says, it's tremendous words. I didn't really put enough emphasis. It bothers him. I know bother is not the right. If he cares, very much cares that when a person stumbles, and not because he's hurt by it, he cares, personally just cares that you're stumbling. So yes, there's an element that you could say Hashem is being hurt or diminished and so on. And of course, we talk about Golus of Shechina Begalusa, God's pain, he's in our pain. That for sure is correct. But there are levels, even in the deepest level, even if he's not in pain, but he cares absolutely about every detail that you do. That's what he's talking about here. Remember, this is not negating everything else you learn, that it does actually affect pleasure, pain, and so on. He's just talking here about Atzmus. That's why I'm saying this is Mamayl Lamat. He's talking about Atzmus. He's not talking about us experiencing it. He's talking about I was bringing down that level of Atzmus. So I see this as a pure gift. Honestly, it's a gift that Atzmus says, I care even on my deepest level. And it could have also not been that way.
Oh,
Could it be that would have been off limits? Like, as I said, many great masters say that's off limits. They don't talk about it. They don't even want to go to Atzmus because it's like so beyond us. But Chassidus Chabad, I find to be, like in that sense, that I don't want to say the word greedy, but like the Alter Rebbe said, Mili b'shamayim im chalecha fasti. I don't want your Gan Eden. I don't want your Elam Haba. I want you. How many tzaddikim do you hear that from? Most people say having Gan Eden, Elam Haba. Come on, that's my whole life is to have Gan Eden, Elam Haba. You know, and the Alter Rebbe in I think Yutas Kist of Tafshin Tazayin, the Rebbe said something very interesting. He said, "Why are we being told what the Alter Rebbe said that he doesn't want Gan Eden and Elam Haba? He wants only Dichalein, Atzmus. Why are we being told that? It's a level for the Alter Rebbe. It's very clear the Alter Rebbe said it. No one else said it. So you know what the Rebbe's answer is? Interesting answer. He says, the Rebbe says, that's how we were taught, that we have to want it all. And that's the Alter Rebbe wanted it, and therefore we also have to want it. That's how he answers. Interesting answer, right?
yeah.
And to reiterate,
in other words, we want God entirely. We don't just want your Giluyim. We don't just want all the fireworks and all the glitz. As deep as it is, we want all the way. And that to me, ultimately, when you learn all of Kabbalah and all other Chassidus, to me, that's where Chassidus Chabad goes, which is amazing because that's the place you usually say to enter there. You know, either you have to completely lose yourself, like we said, or you just don't go there. But to go there, that's called it. I would call that I don't want to use the word greedy, but the kedusha, the ultimate greed of kedusha, like the story of the Baal Shem Tov when he was once praying for a child that was very sick, and there was a gzeira, and he was like really praying. So from Shemayim they said, Baal Shem Tov, stop praying. It was already a gzeira, chuka chakakti gzeira gazarti. This child can't, God forbid, is going to be taken. But he had such rachmanis to the mother. Baal Shem Tov continued praying, and they told him there'll be consequences because a tzaddik prays. They say tzaddik geizer kodesh baruch hu mekayim. A tzaddik can both tzaddik kodesh baruch hu geizer tzaddik mevatel. A tzaddik can override a gzeira from above, and the other way he can make a gzeira that even Shemaim. So they said there'll be consequences, and the Baal Shem Tov prevailed. He continued, and the child was healed. Of course, the Baal Shem Tov was, the mother was, everyone was, but Shamayim said, since you did that, you will lose your chelik in Elam Haba. That's how the story goes. You know, that's a big thing, to lose your part. It's one thing losing Elam Haza, material world, but to lose Elam Haba. So the story goes that the Baal Shem Tov started dancing. And his students said, why are you dancing? He says, because now finally I can serve God for no ulterior motive at all. Not even Elam Haba. I know I'm not getting it. So I serve God purely because I want to, because God wants me to do. So the end, I don't know if this ending is added later or it's true or not true, but at the bottom line, they say that from heaven, a call came out and said, give him back his Elam Haba. That pleasure we don't want to give him. The pleasure, so give him back his Elam Haba. It's a Shmaka story.
You know,
Okay.
this last part where you just said about that, you know, what's deeper, that you, when you make, God forbid, a chet, God gets hurt by it or not. And you said it's the opposite. You would think that being hurt by it is deeper, but in truth, it's not. And now I understand why it's not, from what you just said, I think, because if he's hurt by it, then in a sense, he's got some self-interest in it. If he's not touched by it, but he's totally negated to it, he's only wants it for you, he's only thinking of you. It's total chesed. It's just like dichaleim, when we want God, just like the Baal Shem Tov just said.
That's very
right?
good.
The Baal Shem Tov said he doesn't want Olam Haba. He just wants God. He wants, if only for God's sake, it shouldn't touch me.
So excellent. That's very good. Very good. And you'll see from the Sikha and Chelik Vav and Shmois is something like that direction. And I'll even give you guys a suggestion. When we finish this, go over to your spouse and say, I want to do something just because you want it, not because, try it out. Do something not because there's any benefit or anything, simply because you care.
Do that.
Half the things I do for my wife are for that because of
Only
Only
half?
half?
Sir? Only half?
I
You
was
gotta
being
have
diplomatic.
he fears his wife. Kidding.
Sure.
Okay,
The other
okay,
half I
okay.
actually enjoy.
Yeah, there is that. That's very correct. I was going to use a different, but same idea. If someone who doesn't need something wants it, and it's Atzmus, their commitment to it is a lot deeper than if they need it. Because the need, as you said, besides I get something from it, but it also means once I get it, I'm satisfied. But if it's something I want no matter what, it's negated to me. Even if I don't get fulfilled, there's no limit. It's forever. The Rebbe once said this interestingly the other way around by Avodah. If somebody learns Torah because they love to understand wisdom, Hashem's wisdom, right? Another person learns because Hashem said you should learn Torah. Who's going to learn more? So most people initially say the person who has gishmak in it. You enjoy it, you're going to learn with more passion and more commitment and so on and so forth. So the Rebbe said, no, because the person who's learning only because of the passion, once he's satisfied, it's like you drank your water, I'm sated, I don't need to drink more. The person who's doing it because Hashem said so, even when you are understanding it, you'll continue because you're doing it only because Hashem said so. Obviously, you want both. But it's interesting, sometimes you do it out of pure commitment. It's deeper than you're doing it because you benefit something from it, or lacking if you don't have it. It's the power of real commitment, real devotion, real Kabbalah. Now, we want both. Yeah.
I have a question to ask, and I was going to wait till the recording's over, but I actually think this might be beneficial. However you respond to this, I think it'll be beneficial. So I'm going to ask while you're recording it. So I'm currently in Yosemite National Park with my wife, and we went here for a couple of days just to get away and do some commune with nature. So I'm out with nature, whatever. I'm alone. My wife's doing her own thing because it's a long story. But and I came to Yosemite with a lot of mind base in my mind to say, "Ma God du Maasecha," how greatly are your works, and to try and connect with the through nature, because that's something we learned in IAS. That's one way to go from and I understand that's from Lamata to Lamaila.
Did we lose you? Hello? You may have lost-
This mountain.
I think we lost
You
you
there?
for a minute. We lost you for a minute.
Oh,
Connection.
okay. Well, yeah. Anyways, I'm in this national park.
No, we got it. You said it's like
Jeez,
Mamat
something
Lamai-
wrong with my.
We
Okay.
heard the beginning.
So, and then there was a moment with all that hidbanut, with all that contemplation. There was a moment that didn't last that long, where I felt my soul, really my truest essence, wanted to merge with the Eberster, and it felt like
We have to wait because we don't really hear you.
basically.
You're going
Can you
in and
hear
out.
me?
You're going in and out.
I don't know what's wrong. Can
Probably
you
the
hear me?
connection. We
Can
hear
you
you
hear
in
me?
and out, in and out.
Maybe that's a sign I should take it offline. But the question is, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so there was a point where my soul felt like it didn't belong in the body. Yes, it belonged in the body for the time it's going to be in the body, but it really had this feeling like it didn't belong in this material world, and that it really wanted to be with its creator. And in that moment, it wasn't about me. It wasn't about me because I sort of lost myself, and I said, I'm not even supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be united with my Creator, and it wasn't about me. It was like, I felt this imprisonment in my body, and it was really all about I should be over there, or whatever I am should be over there. But it wasn't about me. It was about that's where I'm supposed to be. And now I recognize that I started out lamata, lamata, but the question is, when I was able to say kalas nefesh, where you say kind of nullify myself and say I'm no more. There's this part of me that's really not me. Now my question is, am I now seeing myself still lamata lamaila? Am I still having that perspective, or am I having a lamaila lamata perspective in that moment? And I will tell you, it was very short moments.
It's hard to say because there's a place where they meet. There's a place where they meet. When you get enough mamat lamaila, you can suddenly open up a channel that will be a mamayla lamata one. So it's not easy to answer that. That's like where a student, let's say, is learning, he's understanding what his teacher says, and then there comes a point he has like an epiphany that as if it came from the teacher. And that's maybe where mamat lamaila meets mamayla lamata. That's what I would say.
Yeah, that resonates with me. That resonates. Thank you. Anyways, I wanted to share that with everybody because I just started crying, and the moment left. It didn't last that long. I'm not such a Halakha guy, but I wanted to share that with everybody because
Okay, thank you.
And
very
also
much.
thank you. The iron base really, helped me connect. It was like a hiking like a map when you go on a hike in nature. The iron base was my spiritual map. It was unbelievable.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Enjoy your time there on all levels.
Amen. Thank
May
you.
God protect our brothers and sisters. His learning is all in that honor. I'll conclude with
Amen.
that. So we're stopping here
Amen.
at the bottom of page 201. We only have one more paragraph, short paragraph on Toras Sholom. Let me stop the